Right now. Welcome to another episode of Bodybuilding Q A. As always, I got my co-host Matt Berzicat with me with Camp Jansen, and we're here to answer your questions on all things bodybuilding. The goal of this show is to help you guys get to the next level. That's why we go and answer your questions directly. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the questions for today, and we'll get rocking. Oh, well, look at that. Our first question is actually on junk food. So this is exactly what we were talking about. So let's see here. Okay, so this is from my buddy Robert Walsh. How do you gauge how much junk food you can eat and still maintain? And I'm assuming what he's saying here is maintain good condition. So how would you say that on, I guess, like a lot of the people that follow me, I'm a big proponent of like kind of living your life as well. I like the lifestyle side of bodybuilding. If you say you're not doing a competition, so a lot of people want to see like they see me with donuts, etc. So I guess this would be more of a lifestyle question: is how do you figure out how to like eat junk food and still get in shape? And some examples that come to mind that I see is like some people think that there's like a cheat day, cheat meal, post workout. What do you eat? So how would you say somebody has a lifestyle, how they can eat junk food and not get fat? What would they need to do?
So this is somebody that's already in pretty good shape.
Let's take both sides always. Say somebody who's in good shape and somebody who's not in good shape. I think that's actually a good one to address, because I'm curious to what you're going to say here. Because sometimes people are like, well, if you're not in shape, don't eat anything. But also it's like, well, if you're not in shape and you don't eat anything, you're probably just going to hate your life. So maybe make it work. I'd say there's arguments to both sides. You know?
Yeah. I would say if you're not in shape, so let's say you're someone that's just getting started and you're considered obese, or even if you're skinny fat, whatever, and you're just starting, step one would be just all the normal things that we've talked about. Establish some kind of baseline first. So set up some numbers and some parameters, whatever that may be. It's not going to be perfect. So pick out a calorie number. Even if you just want to start there, pick a calorie number. Don't even worry about anything else. Pick a calorie number, whatever that is, something that makes somewhat sense for your size, and then just track your food. So don't change anything. Track your food. Eat like a normal day, but see what your kind of where your average falls for a week maybe, and then go, I don't know, 500 calories below that, and that's like the if it fits your macros without worrying about macros. That's if it fits your calories, I guess, if you want to call it that. That will at least, obviously, I being a bodybuilder, I hate that approach, but for a normal person just getting started, I'm totally fine with that. And then once you have, the key is just having some consistency calorically. You can't be all over the place. Otherwise, you're never going to figure out, ultimately what people are trying to figure out is how much can I get away with and still look how I want to look, which I think is fine. I don't have a problem with that. Some other people might think that's weak or whatever. I think that's fine. So develop some parameters, consistently track your food, see where you're at. That will at least give you an idea. Someone that's, already pretty lean or in pretty good shape is probably already doing all those things and probably already has some kind of meal plan, or they have an idea of what their numbers are. For those people, I would say you could either you could push the envelope a little bit more. So meaning that obviously what you would want to do is make substitutions. So if you're wanting to have something, then you just exchange, whatever your meal is, and exchange it for something else if you wanted to be as smart as possible about it. But you could also experiment a little bit and just eat all of your normal food, and then maybe plan like one high day a week or 2 high days a week, and just add some junk on top of that, and then just see what happens for a week. Um, you might gain some weight. People, you can't really gauge progress on a day-to-day basis. I think you have to gauge it either on a weekly basis or a monthly basis. So yeah, you might gain a couple pounds from, if you kind of, depending on how much you eat from that cheat meal. But if it falls off and by the end of the week, your weight's right back to what it was or lower, that's still progress. But ultimately, at the end of the day, in both scenarios, you have to have some kind of parameters set up and some kind of consistency. Otherwise, you're never going to figure that out.
Perfect. I think that's awesome. Just to summarize there, it seems that the most conservative approach is, having some sort of baseline that is working towards your goals, and making substitutes to where like the junk food actually fits. So say, you have X amount of carbs, X amount of fats, X amount of calories, and you want a donut. If that donut fits that means you're typically going to be safe. And then your second is maybe playing with a high day to see if you do stick to that plan. So you have a certain meal, and seeing off that plan and seeing kind of how it affects your body. Would those be kind of the two approaches there? And then assessing on like a weekly.
Well, there's a lot more approaches you could do. I mean, those are two that kind of make sense to me.
Mhm.
I mean, there's some people that eat very, very strict. We're not talking about competitors here. If we're talking about competitors, that's a completely different story. But some people I know will kind of be really strict all week and then go crazy and then don't track anything on weekends. And they seem to maintain, and they stay the same at least. You
Gotcha.
know, that's an approach.
You've seen that work? Typically I see that. I see. Well, it,
I've I've seen it work for people that are already in shape. Yeah.
gotcha. Yeah. Already in
You're not
shape. That's the
they
key
don't
piece
get
here.
they don't get any better. They just stay the same.
Yeah. I think for
Yeah.
normal people, and I know we're not necessarily talking about normal people, but just for perspective, is most normal people, they think they're dieting good on the weekdays, which they're pretty much just starving. And then they say, okay, I'm good to go on the weekends. And basically what it does is just basically add fat to what they've already, accumulated. It's the binge and purge kind of
Yeah.
scenario. So
I would definitely not recommend that. That's not the right answer is track everything and make proper exchanges. Although maybe your macros will be thrown off that day, try to not have your calories go over what they normally are.
cool. I love that
But
answer.
people need to understand that you can't, like, we can't promote that. Like, that's not, people will start doing that one day and then they'll do it the next day, and then 2 days turns into 4 days, and that stuff will add up. Your body composition will start changing in the negative way if you abuse that rule, for sure.
Gotcha. So do you have a rule of thumb on like how much junk? Let's just talk about, yeah, I guess this is really a lifestyle thing. If you're getting hardcore into prep or anything like that, I don't think it really makes any sense. Um, but yeah, more as a fit lifestyle. What would you say is a rule of thumb? Do you have any of that, like one time per week, um, 2 times per week, having some junk food, or maybe just having a little something every day? What approach have you seen to be most effective, or what would you recommend?
Whatever fits your personality. Some people do really well with, if you just work like a little bit into like one meal a day, so at least they have something to look forward to every day. Um, a lot of people that I work with, I don't know if they're maybe not, maybe they just don't want to tell me, but they seem to not really care about stuff like that on the daily. It's more of, it's just weekends that really throw people off.
Yeah,
So the good old fashioned general rule, I think one meal, if you have one free meal a week, and when I say free meal, you can have a good amount of food, burgers and fries and a dessert or something like that, or some pizza or whatever, one time a week. That should not in most cases negatively impact people.
Yeah. I think John Meadows was a big proponent of I think he was 90-10. I think he kept saying that. But he says as long as you're 90-10, 90% on your diet, 10% off. I forget what calculation he used. I think it was meals actually, where it would be, I don't know how many meals per week. I'm gonna have to do some math
Well,
here.
yeah,
Whatever,
well,
six times seven.
let's say you eat 5 meals a day. It's 35 meals a week. If you're on point 34 out of 35 meals, what is that?
Oh, 30.
Percent.
That's gonna be way high. Let's see. So it's 97.
Okay, so what if you're like 30 out of 35?
85.
All right. So yeah, that probably makes sense. 90% makes sense. But you can't look at that and say, because it depends how much shit you eat though, and the meals that you're off. You can't use the 90-10 rule and then like you're like, well, I 32 out of the 35 meals for the week were on point, but then the 3 meals that you have off are like a smorgasbord.
Yeah, no, that's totally true. One thing I've found, I did this kind of the hard way. I don't know if you've seen it happen too. I'm sure you have. Is that you can absolutely screw up your results with one gigantic cheat meal, even a week. I've done it, but I'm a little
Oh,
weird that
absolutely, yeah.
Oh, okay, you agree?
Mhm.
I would just stuff my face and it was just pure debauchery. It was something I just did for fun. Sometimes you just like to I just love to eat. I think a lot of bodybuilders kind of just love to eat. So once per week I would do whatever. It was pies, Krispy Kreme donuts, everything. And I was losing 5 pounds per week, but I would gain
You'd gain
five.
5. Yeah.
Yeah, every single, and just it completely halted progress after 3 months. Me and my friend that were doing it, we're like, we didn't lose anything. Gross. We lost like 15 pounds or 20 pounds per week, but net zero.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, you can. I think that the right answer is you got to have some parameters, some numbers set up, and then just kind of experiment whatever fits your personality, and just pay attention. Pay attention and execute an actual plan. It's not that hard. Once you get in a groove, wouldn't you say? Once you get in a groove, and I think most people just never reach that point where they're in a good solid routine. And once you get there, it's pretty easy to gauge what's going on.
I love that you said that. Everybody I work with, I say that exact thing. I say, if you are going to cheat or you're going to try to have junk food or you're going to try to fit your nutrition out at a restaurant, at least get ahead of the game. I say the best place you could be is ahead of the game to try these things out. So having that consistency, having that success, already being in the groove, because you can just kind of work your way back into the groove, worst case scenario. But what I found most people do is they kind of sabotage before even anything's happening. Nothing's really even started. So if you start sabotaging already, it just doesn't allow you to get traction. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, people just have to start, get some traction, and then it's like people ask these questions. I don't know the guy asking you the question, but I hope he's not one of those people that just like asks the question and then he's like, okay, I'm going to apply this. And then he can't even like follow any type of plan for one day, you
No,
know?
this guy's pretty buttoned down. So
That's good.
yeah.
Well,
What
that's good. I don't know. Hopefully that helps him. I don't know. I would need to know like more about what his current plan is and stuff. If someone were to ask me if I looked at their diet and stuff and they told me like a percentage of how close they follow that and I have an idea of the big picture, I could give people a much better answer that they could apply to themselves. But
yeah.
it's hard to, that's a good question, but a tough one to answer.
Yeah, it's a big depends. Everybody's going to be so different. I've seen people
Yeah.
they eat a little bit of junk food and they just it really rocks them, or or maybe they're not telling me something. I'd say the last point I want to talk about on this is kind of like damage control, and I want to talk about like the proper way and kind of like normal way of damage control. Say you do spill over a little bit, but also B, where I think most people get kind of in the wrong path is they like basically they try to keep stacking more and more on. Like this is a kind of a newbie thing, but typically they'll go out and say and like, oh shoot, I messed up this weekend, so now I do double, right? Now I do double, and then they mess up again. Oh, now I need to do triple. So, what would you
Yeah.
say there? What's damage control and what's damaging in damage control?
Yeah. Yeah. I get that a lot from people. I mean, every week it was like, hey, coach, I ate this. What should I do now?
Mhm.
Well, my answer is the same every time. What you should do now is just move on to your next meal and do what you're supposed to do. Like, I don't believe in doing anything to correct it or counteract, just get back to what you're supposed to be doing.
Yep, I totally agree with
There's
that.
yeah, there's no need to try to like overcorrect something at
And
that point.
is the reason that you say that, and I kind of think of it like if you have to double or modify your plan for all these inconsistencies, you're eventually going to destroy the plan. I think of it like with money. I really think money is a great way to think about these things. So if you go out and spend all of the money in your bank account and you want to get that money back, what are you going to do? It's typically if you need to get all of it back in one day, you're going to be doing things that are completely unsustainable. I don't know, robbing somebody. But like in a fitness perspective, it's pretty similar. It's like what 3 hours of cardio. Like now you're getting into something that's ridiculous. It's just going to fall apart in the end.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't it just doesn't. I like the money analogy. It's similar. It just doesn't work that way. You would think it does. You would think like, okay, I just ate. You can calculate it and be like, okay, I just ate 1,300 calories over my diet. Now if I just go burn 1,300, it won't matter, but it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And one thing I wonder, have you ever had this issue? And this is something I kind of come across is especially newer people. They kind of run into this issue is they'll mess up, and then you're like, just get back on the plan, but they keep messing up, and it's like
Hmm.
they go nowhere. I find that to be challenging as a coach because I think some people assume that you can kind of perform that miracle that where it's like they want the coach that's like, oh, I messed up. And then you go, okay, 5 hours of cardio tomorrow. And they're like, yeah, I'll do 5 hours of cardio and we're good. We're always going to get results. And they can't like accept the consequences. I think that's what I'm looking for is not being able to accept that because at some point, like really it's a hit. If somebody goes crazy overboard on their eating, and you're like, hey, you just need to get back on the plan, it is a step back. Like that following week, they might have, made more progress now, and they kind of have to accept that consequence. You kind of have to say, like, just like with money, if you don't make all that money back in the following week, that's just the consequence of overspending. So, do you
Mhm.
ever kind of come across that challenge or get what I'm saying here?
All the time. And I don't, yeah, I don't know how we handle that or how what people want us to tell them. Like, oh, it's okay. Like, well, I mean, ultimately, they're just hurting themselves. So I mean, I don't know what they expect us to really say about that or to have some magic trick or whatever. Unfortunately, there isn't one. You just have to. That's why I made that post last week about having a short memory, just because I was having a lot of people slipping up and like freaking out, like everything's ruined, like because they had one meal or a day where they didn't have all their meals or whatever. We all have those days, or maybe even a couple days at a time. It's just forget about it. Don't dwell on it. It's just like everything else in life. If you dwell on it, then like you said, you just end up, the plan just becomes ripped up and thrown out the window. And then you may as well not even have one. That's
Yep.
why the plan is there. That's why the plan is there. If you even if you physically have to pull it up on your email or whatever and look at it, just that's why it's there. It's always there for you to go back to. Of course you're going to fall off of it. Everybody does.
Yeah.
You just go right back to it. It's the sooner the better. That's the only answer.
Yeah, I think a good way to think about it is, yes, there is a consequence to it, but the consequence can be mitigated if you get back on quickly. Where people don't get the consequences mitigated is when they dwell, when they say, all right, I screwed up, screw this whole day. And then they kind of, you lose that momentum. And the best way to get momentum back is to just get right back at it. And I think it's hard for a lot of people to swallow that you messed up. It takes a humble person to say, I messed up. This is some form of a consequence. But if I get back on, it's the least big consequence. Where most people, they dwell or they keep doing it. They don't learn from their mistakes, and it just adds up. I think that's actually one of the most challenging things is people don't know how to get back on track, and they don't know how to accept that. They expect there's some magic to it that you can just kind of correct mistakes. Sure, it's possible to maybe do it, but over the long term, it just doesn't work that way. The plan falls apart, like we were talking about.
Yeah, it's just a mindset thing. You just have to, and we that's a big part of our job is, I think we just naturally have a different mindset than what a lot of our clients have. And if you can kind of teach them that mindset or just a different way to think about things, I think that's a game changer for a lot of people. If you can just challenge people about how they approach things and how they think about it. And I've always been one. I've never been shy about, even as far as I've made it, I would be much further if I would have been doing all the things that I'm saying now.
Mhm.
If I would have, there were a lot of times over my career where I wasn't as strict as I should have been, or doing everything that I could have been. And what I do now, honestly, is I make myself, let me think of an example. Whenever I have the urge to not do something that I'm supposed to do, like eat a meal that's on my plan, I literally have a conversation with myself in my head, like, and I talk to myself pretty mean. That just works for me. Some the people watching this, some the people, I don't know what you want to label them as, but they're like, oh, you need to be more positive with yourself. Like, fuck,
Yep.
man, fuck that. It works. It works for me. So I will literally sit there. A good example is like, I'm on my I know this happens to a lot of people, bodybuilders specifically, like trying to gain weight. That last meal of the night rolls around, right? And you're on the couch and you're sitting there and you're like dozing off and you're just like, oh my God, I just want to go to bed, but you have to eat. Especially if like you don't have a meal that's like already prepared and you have to cook it, that's even worse. And the old me, I would always just be like, it's not a big deal. I'll go to bed. It is a big deal when you do that every night.
Mhm.
So now I literally just have a conversation with myself, like, hey man, you gonna keep doing the same old shit and you're still, you're not gonna win again. And then I start just talking to myself like that. And then I get pissed off. And then I'm like, what am I in a rush to go to bed for? I don't have to be to work in the morning, like just get your ass up, go make your food, eat it, and then go to bed. Like, so I forced myself to make a conscious decision by having that conversation with myself in my head instead of just blowing it off and not thinking about it and then being pissed off about it later.
Yeah, what you just talked about is crazy powerful stuff. It's just being conscious about it. I those conscious conversations are such game changers. I remember one show, I was literally working like 12 hours a day on one job. I was starting up another business. I had 2 hours of cardio a day plus my workouts, I would literally I would wake up at 3:30 in the morning, hit my hour of cardio, go to work at 5 a.m., get off of work. I had a workout in the middle of the day, get off of work at 8 p.m., cook dinner, and basically have to go to bed by 10 and do it again and again and again. And it just felt like impossible. And I just had that conscious talk with myself saying, do whatever it takes to just make it perfect, because what are you going to regret? A little less sleep. Things are crazy right now, but what you can do is just make sure you get it all done. That's the one thing that you're not going to regret. You're not going to look back and blame all this stuff. So I said, any sleep I have to sacrifice. I know it's not the best thing, but sometimes you're just so maxed out that you just got to go all in. So any sleep that I have to sacrifice to get my meals perfectly prepped, get my last meal in, and do whatever it takes for the show, you're going to commit today that you're just going to do that until you get to the show. And that conversation was epic. I would literally collapse. Like, I would forget to kiss my girlfriend. I was so tired to go to bed. I would just collapse in my bed. But that conversation got me through the whole thing, working crazy hours, two businesses, ridiculous prep. I had 5 whole meals per day. So it was just a ton. But that conversation, if I had to stay up till 11, I stayed up till 11, whatever it was. If I, cardio every single time, I would literally half pass out on cardio, but it was that conversation that did it. So that was huge.
Yeah. I ask myself, the thing that's powerful for me is, I will ask myself, like, okay, if you don't do whatever you're supposed to do right now, that means you better be okay with losing. Okay. And then I'm like, am I okay with losing? No, I'm not okay. And then I go do, that's what you have to ask yourself. Am I, whatever your goal is, okay, am I okay with not reaching where I want to be? Then you can, if you say, yeah, okay, I'm okay with it, well then, all right. But chances are the answer is going to be no. And then you force yourself to make that decision.
Yeah. I think what you're kind of saying here is that future conversation. And I think it's so powerful. I tell people who come into my coaching, it's like, well, what do you want out of this? Say you're at the end, look back already and say, like, what decisions are you proud of? And if you start thinking in that way, you can be like, oh, shoot, was it those little snacks I grabbed at the middle of the night? Was it saying, screw it, out at dinner, just eating, dessert? These things sound goofy, but if you look from basically at your starting point or to the finish point and you look backwards, you can already count those things and say, I'm not going to do it. And I think that's super powerful, is just having that conversation with yourself with, what you are and are not going to commit to.
Yeah. What are you okay with? Are you okay with not accomplishing what this is all about? Or are you not? I think if you just ask yourself, that and make it real to yourself, every little mini decision that you have throughout the day. And then after a while, you don't even really have to do that, because then it just becomes habit.
Yeah.
And then you don't even have to you have these conversations less and less with yourself.
Yeah, 100%. That's why it's so nice to be black and white, is what I say. Like, I was always 100% on my on seasons, prepping for a show, but off seasons I was kind of like waffly. But just that conversation, even with an off season, I told myself, I'm going to do this exactly like a prep. I just want to see it's going to be black and white. If it's not on my plan, I'm not doing it, and I already committed to it. And just like we said on the other episode, I was out eating pizza with you even, and you were like, what the hell are you doing? You can have pizza. And I was like, this is something I committed to. And I always tell people, you're never, ever, ever going to regret sticking to your goals. Like, there's very little regret when it comes to your true goals. And people are always like, well, my kids, my work, if that's truly that important, then it is your true goal. It's all good. I tell people that, like, if your kids are more important than bodybuilding, that's awesome. This is a great thing. Have bodybuilding suffer because of that. So that's your true goal. So that's why I say it applies all around. It just, whatever it is that your true goal is, I think if you go 100% to that, you'll never be in regret.
Agreed. Totally agree.
Sweet. Cool. That was
Yeah.
killer. That was powerful stuff. Let's go to the
Yeah.
next question here. So here's from my buddy Dustin, transitioning from powerlifting to bodybuilding. This is going to be an interesting one. I don't know if you've directly ever had some experience here, or worked with anybody that had experience kind of going from being a powerlifter to a bodybuilder. This guy, I think he's dealing with some like some injuries and stuff like that, and is thinking more sustainability in bodybuilding. So he wanted some advice on how he could actually just transition from powerlifting into bodybuilding, what he kind of has to think about. So I'm curious what you would kind of recommend for him.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that that's a very smooth and kind of natural transition and progression, actually. But I guess what I don't want him to think is bodybuilding is not just, a lot of people think bodybuilding is powerlifting. You're just working in a higher rep range, and that's not true. It's much more than that. Um, he's gonna have to think about, so in powerlifting, it's all about, moving a bar from point A to point B. There's not much thought other than that. I mean, there are, as far as mechanics go and being efficient with the lift, but bodybuilding's, when you're in a set, it's completely different, because you're thinking about, well, at least what I'm thinking about, especially since I have transitioned into, I don't do anything super crazy heavy anymore. I haven't for 10 years or more than that, more than 10 years. So after I tore my pec, I said, okay, how can I maximize my training and minimize the risk of injury? And so I just found exercises that I could put myself in advantageous positions to load a muscle as much as I can feel it and as safely as I can. But I'm finding a way to make every rep harder, versus in powerlifting, you're not thinking about that at all. You want the reps, you don't even want to feel the reps at all. So I'd say that's the main thing, is just when you're training, it's not just, okay, instead of doing singles, doubles, or triples, now I'm just going to do sets of 8 to 12 on everything. It's more than that. You're going to reprogram in your mind, how you're executing an exercise and how much you feel it. Like, I feel rep 1 through every rep I do. Like, a lot of people, I feel like they only feel the last few reps. I can't really do more than 15 reps on any exercise, no matter how much weight I have on it, because I feel it. I feel it from rep 1 to rep 15. And that's a long time. I mean, that's usually about a minute of constant tension. That's a long time. So that would be my main advice. And then, obviously he's gonna have to just be smart and set up his split a little bit different. I would set it up based around whatever his weak body parts are cosmetically. Meaning, I would probably, if he's got to, if he wants to work on a certain area more than another, obviously the frequency of those workouts is going to, for that body part, will be more, stuff like that. And then I don't know if he follows it. A lot of power lifters don't really follow any type of diet. It's just kind of eat as much as you can type thing. So that'd be the other thing that would be new to him.
I think that's an awesome answer.
So.
I think you covered a huge amount of really powerful stuff here. Just talking about, feeling, feeling the muscle, thinking about the muscle, executing in a way that you're maximizing the stimulation of the muscle. It's such a different approach than powerlifting. Not just higher reps, because you won't necessarily get all the benefits by just increasing your reps. It's really focusing on the feel and execution of those reps. Kind of as a good memory jogger for me, sometimes even just bodybuilders, in my case, you focus so much on the numbers and you kind of forget about like the feel sometimes. And I think that's such a huge piece in bodybuilding that's so key. Um, yeah, even as a beginner, I think that's why bodybuilding is very challenging, is because you don't feel anything, and feel can be like, well,
Yeah.
what the hell is even feel?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a perfect answer. Anything else you'd like to
Yeah.
add on that?
No, I was gonna say, like, I took one of my clients, a girl I've been training, a girl that I've talked about her already. She she's never really lifted weights and she wants to do bikini competition. So I kind of was blowing her off because I'm like, yeah, whatever. You're not even serious. Anyways, this girl has, like, in 5 months, I'll have to send you the pictures after, just from lifting weights. She's just like learning like the basics, and it is amazing how much she has changed. But she's been training 5 months, and before I headed down to Florida, I was like, hey, why don't you and your husband come down
Oh,
to Des
nice.
Moines? Come down to Des Moines because they're in Cedar Rapids, a couple hours away. Come down and let's put you through an actual workout, because I can send you something on paper, but it's not the same. Not just like looking at checking on form and stuff like that, but just how to progress through a set, the pace of the workout, the intensity of the workout, what what are working sets truly like? What should they feel like? And I've got her, she has a logbook and she's logging all her weights, and I'm looking at it, and I she crushed with me. She crushed every lift by almost double. Like, when I'm saying the weight she's using,
Wow.
just because when you're new, you just don't know,
Yeah.
like, what it's supposed to feel like. What we were doing sumo deadlifts, and she's like, I'm feeling like strain in my lower back, and I'm like, no, that's like totally okay. You're just feeling your lower back is pumped. It's not strained. Like, your form is perfect. They just don't know how things are supposed to feel. You just reminded me of that when you said, like, well, what am I supposed to feel? They don't know.
Yeah.
So it was very important that people that are new go through that. So now she has an idea, like, after the workout, she was pretty, she felt things that she's never felt before.
I think that's like a crazy awesome point. I didn't exactly put that together in my head, but now I have a really, so basically I was an in-person trainer as well. And what I found, and you could let me know what you think as well, is at the beginning, it's almost all that stuff. It's like, it doesn't exactly like help them, basically once they
No,
first start, like they just need to set this foundation. Like you say, squeeze your pecs, like they don't know what the heck is going
no, I
on.
don't even bring that up at the beginning. No.
Yep.
Yeah.
But they need that beginning part to get to where they're feeling the stuff. And I think that's why, like like a second session, like down the line of when you're more advanced, is so key. That's where some of my students, like I want to get them out to Vegas to help them once they're at that high level. Because I got guys, they're starting to deadlift, say like 135. Now they're deadlifting 405. Now it's time to now I think once you're in those bigger numbers, you're at a
Yeah.
perfect spot to take it to the next level with the feel. And that'll just set you to just a
Yeah.
completely different trajectory. I know one of my buddies, he came down here and visited me. We did the same thing. We went through a workout. I showed him how to squeeze his pecs because he's benching like 200 pounds. Showed him how to squeeze everything, blasted through all of his personal bests. He was just like, what the hell? That pace, exactly what
Yeah.
you said, how to think about working sets. It's all stuff you cannot tell to somebody when they first begin. They kind of have to get to a certain level. But I think once you're at that level, getting with like an in-person trainer to have that session, not an in-person trainer, a bodybuilder specifically, I would say, because
Yeah.
there's a big difference
There's
between
a big
just
gap. Yeah.
a normal trainer and somebody who actually, trains for bodybuilding to walk you through something like that. So I think that's a big takeaway there. If you're starting to get pretty advanced and you don't know what it really is like to connect with the muscle and get into those working sets and like push through a workout with that mindset, I'd say it's gigantically beneficial. Say anybody, it's worth flying out to Matt. Going ahead and do that. It'll be something that sets you up for the rest of your life, really.
I'm excited. I'm excited to see the changes she'll make now implementing this over the next 5 months, you know, because she's been able to, I mean, an unbelievable transformation doing what she's doing, basically going in the gym. I've told her, she sends me videos every week. She's getting just really good at the movement patterns. And I've just told her to just increase weight, just get stronger at them. That's all I've told her, and told her things on form. You know, I haven't talked about feeling or anything at all until yesterday. So it'll be interesting to see what more happens now. Another thing I realized, like, this is, you're gonna think this is funny, like just the way our minds work. Like, you know how our minds work, like when we're talking about poundages, just like with, like, we just think like plates, like 45s. So like I noticed she'd send me videos of like leg press, and she'd have like 45s and then like 10s and 5s on there. And
Oh yeah.
I'm like, whoa, we don't put those on leg press. Like, like, trust. So she's doing like, I'm like, you are way stronger than that. So because she's adding up the poundages, you know, it's like if you put, to somebody that's new to lifting, they put 245s on each side of a leg press. They're like, that's 180 pounds. I only weigh 130. You know, that's a lot. So I'm like, no, trust me, you can do way more. And so she, you know, the next week she did like 3 plates. And then I'm like, you can do more. And then the next week she did 4 plates. I'm like, you can do more. She's like, oh my God, really? And I'm like, yeah. So, you know, she's doing 5 plates for like 10 reps.
That's awesome.
If she didn't have someone telling her like, yeah, that is okay and that's normal, you know, their minds don't think, they just don't know any better.
100%. This is why this stuff is I'm getting into, like, if you really want this, and if you don't have like some crazy like short point in time goal, like bodybuilding is a lifetime kind of thing. You need to have years of this stuff down. I'm opening all my newer people up to, like, this isn't like a transformation unless you're doing a show. I get that, but like all these little things, they're all part of the process. Like you can't just skip to like step Z. You need to go, you need to be in this phase.
Yeah.
You need to be in the just pushing poundage. Then you need to be into learning to connect to the muscle, you know, and then you need to get into more advanced mindset tactics. And you, like, wherever you are, you can't plug these things into people at various stages when they're not there yet. So, and it's so important because you're never really going to get to that next level without knowing it. Like, I didn't know, like, until I went through training with a real bodybuilder on how the pace and all that stuff, the contractions actually work. You're not really going to know. And if you get that right away, you're probably going to forget it because it didn't make any sense. So it has to happen all at the right times. And, you know, adding plates to the leg press instead of, you know, other things, like all those things, you just can't teach them at the beginning. Like a funny thing is I get the poundages too. I'm almost about to text them like, you just tell me plates. I don't give a crap. Like, there's no such thing as a 900-pound leg press. There's a 5-plate leg press. There's a 6-plate where there's no, like, that's how it is. So,
God, what was I going to say? I was going to say something else about that. I lost it.
I was talking about how teaching people at various phases, you need to teach them, you know, at that phase, or else it's just not going to make sense.
I lost it. That's all right.
Oh, okay. No worries. I mean, my bad.
That was all good though. Those were good points.
Cool. Sweet. All right, let's go. Let's just do one more. This one's kind of it's not too deep of one, but let's just go ahead and finish off with this one. Is waist trainers. I'm actually curious to know your answer on waist trainers, because I don't know the answer really. If you don't, that's all good too. But basically, the efficacy, and this is Dom C87, efficacy behind waist trainers.
I think that I think that they work, but I think they work because it just makes people more cognizant of keeping their core tight all the time. I don't think
Gotcha.
they do anything magical. I think they can be dangerous for sure if you're cinching them way too tight, like some girls do, and you can definitely start, causing. I would think causing some disorganization of your organs. You know,
Hmm.
um, do they burn fat? No. People that I still get people ask me, should I get a waist trainer? Like I hold all my fat in my stomach.
Mm.
No, that's not the purpose of them. I think they're great for guys. Nick Walker is a great example. Um, he's been, they were talking about his stomach last year, and how he needs to have better control over it, or like Rolly Winkler.
Yep.
He's been using one, and I think for guys like that, like I said, I think the main thing it does is it just forces you to not let it hang out. And over time, when you do that, when you keep your stomach tight, I feel like it trains the TVA, the
Yep.
transverse abdominis, subconsciously, and you don't even know it. And you just have better control over your stomach. Do I think it actually physically makes your waist smaller? No, I don't.
Gotcha.
I just think your waist is what it is. Your hips are as wide as they are, but I do think it just helps you have better control over it.
Yep. I would totally agree with that. Um, that's kind of what makes the most sense is that your TVA is just activating more and more.
Like, yeah, all day.
Hey, what do you
Um,
think about this? This is kind of an odd one, but I swear it has merit. Have you found that like people do just like bloat up with gas? And do you think a waist trainer like just like stops your body from like blowing up with like gas?
maybe, I don't know.
Because that's what I don't know. Like for example, sometimes I'll just like feel like just super like bloated, and like once like the like I don't know. I really I guess I don't exactly know where I'm going with this, but it might stop like your insides from like inflating as much. What do you think about that?
uh, yeah, but I mean, I don't know. Is that a good thing or bad thing?
That I don't know.
I don't think we do know. I do think everyone would agree that like there is like a too tight, like you
Uh,
don't want the thing so cinched that you're crushing your ribs and your organs, but I think it definitely can be beneficial. I mean, there's people swear by it,
mhm.
and we've seen it work. Nick's waist look much better this year. Rollies has improved, so I think they do something.
Yeah. So would you say then if somebody is dealing with, we're probably going to have to define what a waist issue is, but if they are dealing with a waist issue, would you recommend them?
Yeah, in scenarios like that, I would, but like I think it's kind of overblown for like women and bikini girls and stuff. I think they're more effective for bigger guys that are just having to push tons of food. Um, and their stomach gets stretched out, and I think it's works the best in those scenarios. I just don't see a point like let's your girlfriend like Pearl wants to get a smaller waist. Is her wearing a waist trainer really going to change her waist that much? I don't think so.
Hmm. It could have some sort of like minimal effect. Like if their waist isn't gigantic, maybe strengthening. I think there's going to be some net effect to strengthening the TVA, like we're talking about to anybody. But like if you're stretched out, and let's clarify that we're talking about people who don't have a body fat issue. They have a
Yeah,
like
right.
distension issue of eating too much food, just holding on to like too much food in their stomach, their intestines. So, having your TVA strengthened to hold that shape better. Is that right?
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Okay. So that's when you want a waist trainer is if you're it's not that you're too fat, it's that your stomach is basically stretched. out, your TVA
Yeah.
is weak or something.
I think that most people that ask the question though are just, it's a body fat issue for most people.
hundred
And
percent.
they're just hoping that they're like, oh my God, if I get this waist trainer, it'll help. But I think it's just like upper levels of bodybuilding is where it will make like, you know, a slight 2-3% difference is big, you know?
Yeah. Is that ironic though? It's like it was kind of like made as like a phony, like get rid of fat device, but like in upper like manly bodybuilding, it's
Yeah.
actually something that's like helping.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, that's kind of
This
interesting.
like this gimmicky device. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of an odd outcome of it, but it makes sense.
Let's
So
do that. Let's do that one. Let's do the female, the hormone one. We may as well.
okay, cool.
The question.
Last little topic though on waist. I'm curious to what you say
Yeah.
on this. Does lifting heavy blow your waist out?
Oh man. I don't think so. I don't think so directly, because if you know lifting heavy with the compound movements, you know, you're talking about deadlifts and squats, etc. I don't I don't think so, because if you're good at bracing and you know how to brace, I don't see why it would. I think people get bigger waists just because there's no way you can physically grow every part of your body substantially and your waist not get bigger with it. There's just no way that that can happen. The greatest, I think that's one of the greatest genetic components that someone can have as a bodybuilder is, you know, like Sean Roden, as an example, is somebody that could grow a lot of body parts and his waist stayed, you know, either as small as it was or it grew very minimally.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just using him as an example. That's a huge part of bodybuilding. And I don't know. I don't think that heavy squats and deadlift directly make your waist bigger. I think it's just the bigger you get, the bigger your waist gets. So you have to offset the waist getting bigger by getting bigger shoulders and a bigger quad sweep and stuff like that. So I don't think it does.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think people who do build a lot of like oblique muscle and that kind of stuff, I think it could be due to like lifting in a certain way where you're kind of like, I don't know, maybe a little too
I think
unstable.
that I just think that the benefit of those lifts early on in a career way outweigh worrying about your blowing out your waist. As someone progresses through their bodybuilding career and they get bigger and older, you know, you're not really doing a lot of those lifts anyways.
Uh-huh.
At least not as heavy as you used to.
Yeah. I think the big scare is the same exact thing with what people are making a mistake of with waist trainers is they think that if they already are fat, that if they squat and deadlift, it's going to blow their waist out more. When in reality, it's just you just need to get leaner. The squat and the deadlift,
Yeah.
they're not gonna be the culprits or the reason not to do it. You know, the benefits, like you said, the benefits outweigh, you know, any minimal impact that you'd have.
Yeah. Like, so if you're just someone that's just starting out bodybuilding and they're like, I don't deadlift or squat because I'm worried about my waist. That's bullshit.
Yeah.
That's a cop out. But if you're someone like, I hate using him as an example. I'm just using him because I know him. Nick Walker again. He's kind of gotten away from heavy deadlifting and squatting just because the benefit for him. I mean, he's there already. He's got all the size. So I can understand why he may not do those exercises, because let's say they do promote that a little bit. For him, the benefit of not doing those exercises outweighs doing them. Does that make
Uh-huh.
sense?
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And he's
But I would say
again,
for the overwhelming majority of people, that's not something you need to worry about.
perfect. Cool. That works right there. All right, we'll go to the last question here. This is by Caitlin J. Go. And have you dealt with female clients with hormonal issues?
Yeah, all of them.
Really?
Well, any female that competes, yeah.
Mm,
So I think that people say this and they get so, hormones are a confusing thing for people that don't know a lot about them, but ultimately it's pretty simple. And women and men face the same. All that happens hormonally is not that much. When you're deep into a diet and you're super lean, all that happens for a woman, their estrogen decreases, it's minimal, testosterone decreases, T3 decreases, and leptin decreases. So all of those levels of all four of those hormones are low. And that's really it, which all makes sense and is completely normal. And I think it's way overblown. Now, if you were to stay like that for a very long time, and maybe we need to address what each of those does. I don't, testosterone, people understand, estrogen, people understand, leptin is a hunger hormone. So as it's made in body fat cells, so as you have less and less body fat cells and less body fat, leptin is lower. Leptin is the hormone that tells you that you're either hungry or not hungry. So if you have no body fat left, leptin is low. Obviously, that makes sense. Is that a big deal? No. T3. So your body, T3, obviously, it's one of its main job is to, T3 is your thyroid hormone, the active thyroid hormone. That's the biggest regulator of your metabolism. So it makes sense that the leaner you get, the more starving you are, your body's trying to kind of protect itself and slows down the conversion of T4 to T3. It's still producing, so there's still thyroid stimulating hormone there. You're just not taking it and converting it and using it because your body's like, yeah, you're starving. We should maybe slow this down. So, like I said, it's not that big of a deal. You know, girls and the estrogen, the girls will stop having their period. Obviously, that's normal. Where it becomes a problem is if you stay like that all the time. And that's where women, the importance that I totally agree, that I do agree with, is post show, you know, getting back into a healthy amount of calories will correct that. So um I think the hormone thing is overblown. I think that's just what happens. The important part is to not be obsessive compulsive over it and understand that after the show you just got to get back to normal and get back to normal body fat levels and everything will come back to normal.
gotcha. Do you ever have you kind of figured out, is there an average that you'd see where people kind of spring back to normal, their body starts working back to normal after a show for your females?
Yeah, it's usually 2 to 4 months.
Cool. I think that's
two to
super
four
helpful.
months
What would you say on the opposite end of the spectrum? Somebody coming into bodybuilding or fitness with hormonal issues. Have you ever had that before?
Yeah, I would say get them corrected first. So you're saying like if someone has hypothyroidism or,
Yep.
you
I
know,
think that's
that's
typically the one.
it's typically the one. I mean, you
Yeah.
definitely want to get those corrected first. You're going to be spinning your wheels. And that's where, not to get into a PED subject again and promote them, but that's kind of where, as I say that, and that kind of makes sense, maybe light bulbs are going off in people's heads. They're like, oh, well, that's where the role of T3 comes into play. And that's where PEDs can be a beneficial tool to keep things moving, and actually keep you somewhat normal,
Mhm.
versus not doing anything about it, you know? Again, not that we're promoting that. It's just that's why they're in the sport because it makes sense.
No, that's a super good point on, when you do get shut down, there are things to mitigate that if you so choose.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, definitely. If you're coming into if you're eating normal and you have hormonal issues, then you're going to have to address them and do whatever you need to do, whatever type of hormone replacement you need to do to be normal, for
Yeah,
sure.
I agree. One thing I'd like to say is I think sometimes where this question is coming from is I think a lot of this is more of a girl thing than a guy thing. I found is a lot of people think that like they're. I mean, I guess it's a guy thing too in the testosterone department. But a lot of us, I think this actually applies to everybody. A lot of us think that our hormones are like way more jacked up than they actually are. And even when they are jacked
Yeah.
up, I think it's much more of an excuse. And I find it to be that excuse is used rather than there's actually a big impact. For example, I've worked with people who don't have a thyroid hormone. I've worked with people who have like Hashimoto's disorder. I've worked with people who are women who are they're over 50. I've worked with women at the age of 60. And what I found is every single person that covers all their bases, they typically always get a result that they didn't expect, a great result, to like we even talked about with people starting out and saying, hey, I'm not genetically blessed. This isn't for me. I think this goes back to the same topic of most everybody, even in a lack of proper hormones, can get actually decently far without them. I have somebody I'm working with people that don't even have a thyroid anymore, and we're down 20 pounds. So
Yep.
I don't. I think we
Look at
lean
well just
lean
look
on
at
them.
every natural bodybuilder. There's a lot of really good natural bodybuilders that look amazing and get peeled
Hmm.
and look great. And I guarantee you, if they were to go get a hormone panel done, they're men specifically, I will guarantee you their testosterone's in the dirt, and they
Yep.
still look amazing.
Yep.
Actually, the kid that
It's
I just
exactly what I
watched
was
the
thinking
interview,
of. Yep.
the kid that won Teenage Nationals.
Yep.
Did you watch that? He said his
Yep.
testosterone was 3.
Yep. You look great.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's a great point that you said. It's a lot of that's overblown too.
Yeah, and I've worked with people. I mean, nobody's the same, but I've worked with so many people who have the same sort of hormonal issues, and typically the person that is using it as an excuse, they're just not following. They're not covering their bases. I have so many people that complain about their hormones, and they're the people that are going out on weekends, having
Yeah.
burgers, skipping
Yeah.
workouts, saying, "Oh, poor me, my hormones are so shitty." Or even dudes, "Oh, I could never bench that much." When you're not really focused on your training, you're not focused on your nutrition. Where I do have people with shit hormones that are kicking total ass, doing whatever they can. Sure, it might not be ideal. I will give it that. And it's the case with a lot of people, even with decent hormones. Maybe you're not just getting the ideal result that you would like, but they're getting something. It might not be as fast as a normal person, but over time, you're going to have a net benefit. So I'd say my point to give to anybody who knows they have hormonal issues or thinks that they have hormonal issues, cover all of your bases for at least, I would say, I like 3 months, 90 days,
Yeah.
perfectly awesome on a diet, on nutrition. I guarantee you'll be blown away with your results. I would highly recommend do not do a diet that's not vetted. Work with somebody who knows what the heck they're talking about, and you'll be absolutely blown away with how far you can actually get with some pretty shitty hormones.
Yeah. We'll just look at the opposite of that. That's just like the
Mhm.
opposite of that is the guy that's on a gram of test but eats 2 meals a day and trains like a pussy, and
Yep.
you can't even tell that they do anything. So they're in a great spot hormonally, but they're not doing any of the other stuff right. You can't even tell. And then you have people like you said that aren't in a great spot hormonally, that cover all the bases, that eat all their meals they're supposed to eat, and they train extremely hard and they look phenomenal.
That's huge. Exactly. It's just the power of we attribute so much to hormones. Like we kind of mentioned before, I think hormones are the gateway to get to certain levels. They make things a little more streamlined, but are they the reason that you're not going to see, a substantial result? No. I think
No.
that nearly everybody's going to, if you have all the other stuff, the things that truly move the needle, proper training, proper nutrition, you're going to see things outweigh those hormonal issues. And then once you get that in place, if you do correct hormonal issues, I think there will be, of course, a little bit of a benefit, but it's not something you should rely on in both cases. If you don't have enough, and if you're
Or
just
it,
killing it on hormones.
it makes, or just think about how many bodybuilders or people that compete do shows and they have all of their PEDs, and it makes you wonder like how much of it makes me wonder, like I wonder how much fake stuff I've done, like the stuff wasn't even real or wasn't what it was supposed to be or underdosed, and like you don't even know it, and you still
Yeah.
look great.
Yep. There's that. You've heard that. I'm sure you've heard the argument that, all right, so let's just go get raw with what exactly sometimes it is doing PEDs. Some people actually have to physically inject themselves with an exogenous hormone. That's a deep dive, however you want to cut it. And there's an argument to say that just doing that is such a commitment that typically people who are going down that route, I wouldn't say this is everybody, that's a reason to push it a certain way. So like there's an argument even with PEDs, like how effective is it compared to like if you're doing that, you're clearly serious, you should be at least serious about what you're doing, so that you are actually somebody who's probably, like they say, the people, even somebody who's taking it, like they're probably training harder than you, they're probably dieting harder than you. So what is it really? um
Yeah.
and
I've seen
another.
I saw a guy once I was helping that his estrogen, I don't remember the number, but it was above high,
Mhm.
and he was peeled and dry. Does that make
uh
any sense? Does that make any sense? No, but he was.
yeah. Yeah, I think there's so many examples, and this should be more said, is where hormones are really not that much of the needle changer. And I like to caveat this with everything in the world. Yes, it is for certain people,
Yeah.
but I don't think it is for the majority. Like Phil Heath, I would say maybe it might be pretty
Yeah,
decent
not
for
for
him.
not for what the for what the for what the masses of people, what their goal is and what they want to look like. Are they that big of a deal to them? No. To upper levels of competing and bodybuilding, yeah, it's a big deal.
Yeah, I agree. Every That's the whole thing with what people wonder why, like I guess since anabolics aren't cheating in the IFBB and the NPC, but like say other sports where it's like cheating, like everything at the highest level, every little inch is the only reason you're beating somebody else. It's
Yeah.
it could be how in wrestling, it could be how slippery your skin is. So people start to put oil on them. Even in powerlifting, people will oil their shins and do crazy things because you're playing a game of centimeters. So this is where centimeters actually make a difference. This is where supplements actually make a difference. Anabolics actually make a difference. All these little things like a waist trainer actually makes a difference on the super high level. So I think that's where the masses get super confused, is with all this stuff. They think they need to do that, but always start with your bases covered. I think that's kind of what we're getting at.
Yep. You can't go wrong. You can't go wrong. And like you said, you won't regret it. You're not going to regret covering all your bases ever.
Yep. Love that. We go full circle.
Yeah.
That's 100% it. Is you will, if this is your goal, you want to be the best you can be. You're never going to be pissed that you covered your bases.
Hey, I'm going to use myself right now as an example. Like I've been sending you pictures of my weight and stuff because I'm pumped up about it. Because, dude, there was a long time where I thought like, I'm like, how do those guys get that big? Like, I don't think I can ever be that big. And well, here I am. And why am I this big? Because I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing.
That's
You
such a
know?
good example, even at the highest level. Isn't that the weirdest thing ever? It's like that is the power of the freaking fundamentals. That was the game
Yeah.
changer for me. It was just when I started working with you. It's like most people that I talk to as well. It's like we've tried a diet, we've worked out, we've tried hard for a little bit, but when you get the comprehensive picture of eating the right things, training the right way, it's like, what the hell? Like it just brings you to, like I was telling one of my potential clients today, the crazy part, what people don't understand about fitness and bodybuilding is we're looking more in shape than literal NFL athletes, NBA athletes. Sure, people are getting more and more in tune to how bodybuilders work and getting that physical look, but it's an incredible thing. So like to see yourself get that way through like getting the fundamentals, I think it's like out of this world. That's kind of what makes me obsessed with this stuff. But
Yeah. And I'm someone that's in it, you know? I mean, I know, like, I know all this stuff. Like, I know it, but I still had doubts in my mind. So people that think they look at people like me and think that, you know, we don't have doubts. We all do. It's, you know, but now that I mean, I never thought in a million years I was 100 and, my freshman year of high school, I was 100 and, like 25, 130 pounds,
wow.
just rail thin. I graduated at like 185. And so
Shoot.
to ever think that I would weigh 280 plus pounds. I mean, I would say that I was someone that did sabotage myself, just like the reverse, someone that's been heavier their whole lives kind of has a fat phobia. I had like a skinny phobia. And I'm like, you know, I guess I just always sabotage myself thinking, well, I could never be that big because I'm naturally a thinner person. So maybe there was a lot of self-sabotage there in my past. I don't know. But, you know, now, you know, I was tonight at the gym, I was 284. So
Whoa.
it's like now I'm like I could be a 290 pound. I mean, that's a pretty legit big, and I'm 5'9". So that's a
That's
pretty,
insane.
like, that's a legit, like, pro bodybuilder size. So,
Uh,
you know, it's even to me after all these years, it's still exciting and still really cool what you can do if you just have the right mindset.
Mindset's everything. That's it's crazy. Just that example, it just reminds me of really what we all do to ourselves. Like everybody at the highest level, they're all telling us like you can do it, you can do it. Like you know, Rich Piana, he was like, you can get to 300. And if you see what he did, it's legit. I would have to agree. Like people could put on some serious weight if you're eating 12 meals a day. That's
Yeah.
unbelievable how and that guy worked hard as hell. But yeah, what mindset does, like I probably told you the story a few episodes ago where one of my buddies, he was like, no, I could never be a bodybuilder. I said, why? He goes, well, you could bench 315 in high school. And I was like, well, what was your goal? He goes, it was 315. I go, well, that's the problem, man. I go, your goal
Yeah.
was 315. Mine was 500. So when you open your mind to like what's possible, that's like the only way you get places. It's the weirdest thing. It wasn't until my coach, my first personal trainer, was like, yeah, let's get you up to 200. I was like, what the 200? I weighed 155. And you said every day weigh on the scale. If you don't weigh higher, you got to eat more. And I saw pounds coming on the scale, and I just visualized it, and I got there. I just
Yeah.
had the number 200 in my mind. Got there in 3 months. Actually, it wasn't
Yeah.
clean, but it's the power of belief. You know, as corny as it sounds, it's the truth.
Did you watch The Last Dance, the Chicago Bulls, the Michael Jordan documentary that came out earlier in like June?
Oh,
No?
mm,
Well, I'm a huge Michael Jordan fan. I've told you, people like that fascinate me because people that are the best at what they do, they always fascinate me, and like how their mind works.
Totally.
And something I learned about him on that show, he even said, most people know that he got cut from his varsity basketball team his sophomore year. He didn't make the basketball team in high school.
Mhm.
Um, and then he went to the University of North Carolina. But this is the greatest, arguably the greatest athlete of all time. He said that he didn't believe he was going to be what he was going to be until it was either I think his sophomore or junior year in college. Um, I don't remember what year it was. I think his sophomore year, he made a game-winning shot to win the national title game. He said, not until that point did I realize what I was going to be. And that's someone you would think that, okay, Michael Jordan, he just knew it from the day he was born, like he just had it. And to a certain extent he did, but he never believed he was going to be the greatest until that late. I think that's powerful. That's cool.
It is super cool. You know what, that is kind of the story with all this. You have to have that moment where you're just like, I can do this. And often right after that moment, it's just game over. I know personally, it was once I made it to 200 pounds and I learned how to cut as well. I was like, I can do this. Like
Yep.
I spent 10 years not doing anything, trying as hard as I could. But
Yep.
a lot of it is this kind of belief stuff. But there's that clicking moment of I could do this. After you got me through my first show, I was like, oh my gosh, like I can do this. I had
Yeah.
no idea I could, potentially become a professional at this. And it takes those moments to do that. It's another reason why a coach is so powerful, is because they can open you up. Because just like you're saying to your female client, oh yeah, you have 5 plates, you can do that. They're like,
Yeah.
what? I do it with my students all the time. I'm like, yeah, let's go for 500. They're like, no way. And it just that's the magic that I can
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah. I think that everyone's searching for, or they think that, I guess people like that, or they just think that they don't have what it takes. They think that other people are so much different than they are, but they're really not. You just have to make a decision of what you want, make a plan, be relentless, follow the plan. And then once you get there, you'll have something that happens. Like you just said, you'll have something that happens, some moment where you're like, holy shit, yeah, I can do this. And then from there, you're right. It is like, from this point on, I've never ever said like I'm going to win a show. I've never been that guy, because there's just so much that can happen. But and even like as being as close as I have been, losing by 1 point, blah blah blah. Now that I've hit this point, I can say with, like, there is no doubt in my mind that I will win next year. Like I just know, I just can feel now that I have hit this. I've got over this like thing in my mind that, oh, I could never be that big. Okay, well now I am. So yeah, I am. Like, it's one of those things where, like, I would always view, like, when you're younger or when you're first starting something, I paid attention more to like the top national level guys, more so than the pro guys, even, because that was closer to where I was currently.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh my God, if I could just be like a top national guy. Okay, well, I have been one of those for a long time. And now it's like the closer you get to the level that you want to be at, it becomes more realistic. And now it's just, finally I'm getting to the point where I'm like, oh shit, I am one of those guys. Like I am, even though I'm not yet technically a pro bodybuilder, I am a pro bodybuilder.
Yep.
Like, muscle amount of muscle wise. And so it's just, once people need to just give themselves, I think, more credit. But it can also go the other way too. Some people are delusional, but
You
um
kn- I don't harp on, I used to, and it makes sense to harp on a delusional person. However, I've never really seen the non-delusional person go to the top, you know? Like Ronnie Coleman, whenever you talk to him in his interviews, he's like, yeah, nobody's like me. I'm still the best. I'm the best in the world. Nobody's ever going to touch me. It's just, it's in his
Jay,
head. All those guys, they're the best in the world. It's like funny when they're interviewing anybody. Are you going to win this? Of course I'm going to win this. And it's like, dude,
yeah, Jay.
you're like
Well,
six.
we both love Jay Cutler, and that's someone who, man, I love that guy. But you ask him, he was just talking about it with Dave. He said at his first Olympia, he got last place, but if you asked him, he's like, I'm going to win. Like
uh,
he believed he was going to win every show. He went there to win every show. And I just watched the interview with Antoine, and he kind of has the same mindset as me. Like, it's his first Olympia, and he's like, yeah, I'm just happy to be here with everybody. And Jay talked to him, and he's like, no. Like, your goal should be, I want to stand next to the top six. You know, maybe not think you're going to win, because there is a certain, I mean, that's just not realistic, but have the idea and the mindset, like, instead of I'm just happy to be here, I want to stand next to Brandon and Phil and see where I'm at, you know?
yeah. I see it all across the board is vision. The vision is everything when it comes to getting to goals. If like that's why they say like the top leaders in the world, they were visionaries. Walt Disney, he died before Disney or whatever Epcot Center was made, and somebody was making fun of him, saying to his like son or something, it was like, "Ha, you know, like Walt never got to see this," and he goes, "He saw this all before any of you guys."
Yeah.
He's like, he
Yeah.
was here all in it. You don't understand. He was
Yeah.
there more than all of us. So all
Yeah.
those guys at the
I
top,
think some
they're there.
people, well, no, I think there's two scenarios. I think there's people like that know it from day one, if you ask
Mhm.
them. And then there's people like the Michael Jordan, the story I just told, because Ronnie kind of has the same story. Like, Ronnie didn't know he was going to be
Mhm.
the greatest bodybuilder of all time.
Mhm.
Um, you know, he started competing just for a free gym membership. I don't know at what point he realized, like, that was a possibility. I think that he probably didn't realize it till he won his first Olympia.
Mhm. No, I agree
You
with
know,
that. I don't think it has to be off of the bat, but there at some point, typically
but
the
it has to
vision.
happen at some point. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
I'm not sure if it helps earlier. That's a good question to think about, but I
And you know
definitely
what,
see
dude?
it.
Like, you know what's like what is stopping people from thinking that way? Being afraid to fail, right?
Mhm.
But why is that scary? Like, so what? So what? I have the mindset that I'm going to go and I'm going to dick stomp everybody at USA's next year. Okay, I go get second. Worst case scenario, I get second place again. Who
They,
cares?
they just don't want the backlash of people saying, "Oh, that jackass thought he was going to win." You know,
I
like
guess.
even it basically the one of the top things that we care about is what people think of us, and they in some of the books I've read, it's like one of the top things that you need to they say you need to get rid of to get to the
I'd say
top.
it's I'd say it's the number one thing.
I've talked to like some of the richest people in the world. I talked to them, and I'd ask them like, what was the biggest thing that set you to the next level? And they keep saying the same thing. It's when they stop giving a shit what people thought. Even
Including your own family members and people closest to you.
100%. And what was I? Oh yeah, even I just read a quote today by Stephen King, the author. He
Yeah.
said, I think it was like one of them was being rude. Another one was like being liked. He's like those should be like needing to be liked or accepted by society should be probably second to last on your list of priorities if you want to be a good
Yeah.
author.
Yeah.
It's like all across the board.
Yeah. Yeah. No, man, I think that but you have to, and that's kind of where I'm at in my life. I think you're probably there right now too, is you're just done. I think we can there's people that say they don't care what people think, but they still do.
Mhm.
But I think that we're both at the point, regardless of how we got here, we really don't care.
Oh,
you know,
I'm working on it. I get better and better. It's been one of the top things. I think it stems from like, making your parents happy or something. Making somebody happy.
for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's that's where you're rewarded is you made them happy. If you didn't follow their directions, you made them upset. You lost things. So and like you said, I think the hardest part is with friends, family, relationships. Those are the tough ones to get over where you just say, it doesn't matter,
I think
it's
the
tough.
hard, yeah, well, I know we're going to get off here, but one more thing, the thing where I struggled with, I think for years is when it goes, I try to ask myself, like, why in my 20s was I not doing what I'm doing now? Why wasn't I doing everything I was supposed to be doing when it comes to bodybuilding? And the only thing I can think of is, it's something my parents don't approve of or didn't approve of it. I'm a 35-year-old man now. It is what it is. But, I started when I was 18. They were very against it. And, so I always had that in the back of my mind. And I always thought like, well, you know, I always had another job and was an online coach because that was always in my mind, like, well, that's not a real job and you can't really make a living from bodybuilding. And so it's like, I guess maybe I subconsciously sabotaged myself. And until you, and then I finally did just reach a point where I'm like, um, you just kind of get done like living for other people. And
Mhm.
this is what I want to do. And there's nobody that can tell me that's wrong. I'm not hurting anybody else. And being an online coach, it's 2020. It is a real job now. And, I know people that do very, very well, as do you.
Mhm.
And if, you know, it just, I think it all goes back to just not caring what people think, whether that be, family, friends, whoever. So whatever people can take away from that, that's just kind of my story.
I think it's everything. It's a necessary thing. I personally am working on it currently. So I guess is there anything that you could give to say what got you to not care as much? Was it just time? What helped you there?
I think it was just all the shit I've gone through the last 7 years with like in my, I mean, about them and people close to me know, like relationships with, specifically with my significant others. I got shit on a lot. And in some way that's forced me to like look, I guess, deep within myself and just kind of figure things out. I think I lived a pretty easy life, like I didn't have, I had a great childhood. I haven't really had any hardships. So for me, oh, hang on. There we go. So for me, what people would look at as maybe not really hardships of what I went through the last 7 years with a couple people, to me it was a big deal because that was the hardest things I've ever had to face.
Mhm.
And I'm not delusional. I know people have it way worse, but I think you always have to go through some shit to figure things out.
I totally agree. I use the word, that's kind of the cool part. You kind of hear it with a lot of stories. I know a lot of my changes, they happen at like ultra low points. And the reason why is when you can't go any lower, you have to do something in, I use the word surrender. And you basically surrender to like, well, I just got to do this,
Yeah.
like, or your back's against the wall, certain things that like where you just really can't even afford to give a shit anymore.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. When you're at your low, I mean, that was the lowest. Those were some of the lowest points of my life. And when you're that low, it kind of strips away all the bullshit.
Yep.
And you're just left there sitting thinking, well, now what I have to do. And it's like the one thing that's been consistent in my life that I love my whole life has been bodybuilding.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that hasn't gone anywhere for me. So it's like what I've always used to focus on to get back on track. And this time, this most recent time, you know, just made me, you know, that, and I guess just the sense of urgency because my age, those two things combined forced me to just kind of really grow up in that sense.
And I think another thing about going through shit, it's kind of like you get this mindset of like, well, if I got through that, I can, it's probably okay to like go for other things, you know?
Yeah.
Like when you survive all that stuff, I know I've gone through some moves and breakups and jobs. You know, when you get through all that stuff, you're like, you know what, that was tough. Like I might as well be doing the crap that I want to do, that are part of my actual goals. And I think that is a big piece about pain that is so helpful. Like I tell people, is pain causes motion. For example, even just at the most basic level, if you touch a hot pan, what do? You move your hand. It was painful. You're not going to sit there. So often in your most painful situations, you get an opportunity to actually move. Um, so even in you can always take pain in that way. Like if you lost a bunch of money or you screwed up a show, you can take that pain and say, you know what, I'm going for something else. Or you go through a breakup, you know, you're already in a painful situation. You kind of get this idea of like what you're made of and how much worse could it get?
Well, yeah, that, and two, if you're smart, being in, you know, situations like that force you to be more self-aware and evaluate why you are the way you are, whether somebody really did you wrong or maybe you're the one that messed up. It forces you to evaluate whatever situation you just went through and look at yourself, and if you're smart, figure out why you ended up there. And then it's like you want to make the changes so you don't end up there again.
Yeah, 100%. Well, that's
So
super awesome, man. I'm stoked. I'm super excited to see how this year turns out. Just as always, I say, just don't get injured. just so wrap yourself in bubble
yeah,
wrap, and you're gonna take home the pro card. Yes, yeah,
yeah.
100%. And we're gonna be good to go. But we'll go ahead and end it with that. Any final parting comments before we take off here?
No, everything we just said right there was our parting comments.
Perfect. Sweet. And if anybody wants to reach out to you, how do they get in contact?
Just Instagram, Matt Berzicott.
Cool. Go ahead and reach out to me if you have any questions. Noah DeFreitas on Instagram, also www.noahfitness.com. Give me a comment on this YouTube. But any questions that you have, any sticking points, both Matt and I want to get you to the next level. So please let us know what we can do to give back all the stuff that we've learned over the years. But with that, we'll go ahead and end this episode. Thank you, Matt, for all the awesome knowledge. I'm excited to
Yeah.
definitely post this up. But we'll see you guys again on another bodybuilding Q&A. Peace.
Yeah.